Now, a lot of it is due to our societies. Our societies are, as I said last week, the societies, the closed societies we've constructed for ourselves are in all ways dysfunctional. I mean, our societies and our civilization is all glitz and glamour on the top, but it's all a temporary construction. It's all prefabricated underneath. 90% of the population has been corralled into these high-density city situations, and these people are fed images all day long and all night long from a box in the corner that provides a completely false image of the world to them. And most of them actually believe that the world is just like what is portrayed on TV, because they never really go outside and never get to know their neighbours on a personal level. And when they do leave the house, it's usually to go to work or to go to some job or to do something that they really don't like doing, something that they hate, or they go to spend time with some localised group or club of their peers, or they go out to buy some more useless trinkets in order to keep up with the Joneses or try to make themselves feel a little bit better about their lives. Most of them have never travelled and never actually seen what it's like in another country. And you'll find that many are very unwilling to step outside of their particular social group, whatever that group may be. And meanwhile, all around them, the world gets strip-mined and depopulated, and they just accept it. And they accept the need for hundreds of thousands of dying in never-ending wars, and thousands of children dying from sanctions, and because it's making the world safer, isn't it? All these children dying slowly, being starved to death, and all these people being vaporized and horribly maimed by cluster bombs is all done to make the world safer, isn't it? And to preserve our lifestyle from those who hate us. And of course we know this is true because we're told it's true by scripted talking heads on the television. So I think people really should wake up to that, because it's not true. It is simply not true. The world does not have to be in the state that it's in. Now, I said last week about our closed societies, that our societies really are dysfunctional. I mean, and a lot of our nationalism is also dysfunctional. I mean, it's an admirable quality to take pride in one's heritage and to be proud of one's nation. But in reality, a great deal of mankind's true heritage has been robbed from us. And this is true of all nations. And nationalism, in its present form, can never really have any possibility of succeeding in any concept of a global family. Nationalism undermines the very concept of humankind living peacefully on one planet. Now, I strongly support some type of nationalism in as much as I do not believe that any borders anywhere need to be erased. I believe that people should retain their sovereignty in their respective nations, but I also believe that it's become very obvious that we will never learn to function as a responsible species that can live in harmony together while each country and each faith continues to embrace the concepts of national, racial, doctrinal, or religious supremacy. Okay, there is no supreme race, there is no supreme nation, there is no nation that is greater or better than any other nation. There is no people that are greater or better than any other nation. And let's look at things a little bit. I mean, 90% of all wars that have been fought in the last 2,000 years have been fought for religious reasons. And yet, as can be seen through any investigation, all religions ultimately stem from the same source. And if all mankind was truly educated in the true source of all religions, how could there possibly be wars fought over doctrines described in books? It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. Now, still more wars have been fought from a lust for power and an expansion of national boundaries. But again, if all of mankind was truly educated in the actual realities of our history, then what power would be needed by individual countries? Now, anyone who has researched the ancient Mayan civilization might remember how the Mayans claimed to have had an earlier, harmonious, and very scientific approach to worship that they received from Quetzalcoatl. But over many years, it had become overtly permutated and corrupted by other influence, eventually degrading so far that it included human sacrifice. Now, I believe that an extremely valuable lesson can be learned from the story of the Maya, because it seems that though traces of ancient beliefs still run through modern religions with noticeable starkness, I might add, the stories themselves have over time become so corrupted and twisted by outside influences that they now bear very little resemblance to the concepts and messages that they were once meant to convey. Modern religions teach little of the old knowledge, but instead seem to exert control over their practitioners by enforcing a blind adherence to rigid rules through fear of an unseen and wrathful retribution to be inflicted upon them by a God that they claim to be pure love. The very concept, of course, is pure contradiction right from the very start. I mean, if God really was pure love, which God is, then there is no retribution to be suffered, because we are all perfect, and everything is as it should be. Everything is just part of the plan. Now, modern religious texts also tend to teach that all other texts are to be ignored. And this goes for all of them. I mean, the Catholics will tell you that the Protestants are wrong. The Protestants will tell you that the Mormons are wrong. The Mormons will tell you the Jehovah's Witnesses are wrong. And you find that each one of them says that we are right and everybody else is wrong. And this is, of course, absolutely ridiculous. I mean, they teach that all other texts and doctrines are to be ignored. And, of course, this is to hide the fact that all of the doctrines have been borrowed and permutated and can quite easily be disproved and the real truths discovered through investigation, at which point control by the institutions is lost. This is why they don't like you to go and investigate things. Now, as an illustration of how twisted many of these institutions actually are, we've seen that those Christians, for example, who claim to adhere most stringently to the Bible text, actually alter them to suit their own needs. You'll find that the Catholic religion, for example, has added the no divorce decree that has never appeared in any other version, and never appeared in the Hebrew text from which the Catholic version was derived. The Mormon religion, they claim to be Christians, but they actually follow their own doctrine as described in the Book of Mormon. And it's similar with many other religions as well. More recently, of course, we've also witnessed the same in both mainstream and evangelical Christian religious movements with the introduction of the Good News version of the Bible, where, I mean, even a cursory glance at this book reveals that almost every word of the original text has been changed to produce a modernized and very, very slanted version, and in some cases a quite inaccurate translation of the original stories, which makes any serious investigation or any real assimilation of the true textual concepts literally impossible. And we find similar insecurities, of course, in the Islamic religions, where virtually all outside influences are banned and constant reinforcement of belief is required through rigorous prayer. These types of practices quite obviously and very logically reveal glaring insecurities in any establishment, and even more so when applied to organized religions. I believe that if a religion is so stringent that it cannot be faced by facts, and it cannot be faced by outside influences, then the faith that it's based on seems to be obviously resting on a very thin foundation. And blind belief in any establishment can only be badly placed, and the same is true of any movements that require blind faith, be they religious, political, or otherwise. I mean, all I can ask, and as I've done on numerous occasions, is for people to actually read the words of Christ and ask yourself whether he would have approved of these religious institutions. And who do you suppose he was referring to when he spoke of false prophets, folks? I mean, well, you know, it seems to me that TV evangelists and outrageously wealthy religious institutions certainly fit the description very well. Of course, we can narrow it down a little bit further than that. I mean, let's say that the only corrupt institutions are the ones who support war. And those institutions that still allow homelessness to continue within their parishes. Now that's something to think about. Are there homeless people in your parish, in your area? Are there homeless people? Do the people of these churches support war? Any kind of war? Because all war is terrorism. War is terrorism. I guarantee that if you're in a country that is being bombed, you're feeling pretty terrified right now. War is terrorism. That's it. There is no excuse for any war, because people don't want war. No people from any country want war. Only leaders and banksters want war. We just go along with it, and they get their war all the time because of whatever lies they feed us by this corrupt media that they control. War is terrorism, folks. There's no grey area.